Hi, my name's Sean. I'm the operations manager here at Beaver Coach Sales and Service in Bend, Oregon, and today we're going to talk a little bit about winterization of your coach. Okay, so all of these items that we're going to go over today, they're performed at your own risk. I mean, we don't take any liability if somebody does something incorrectly or if the information here is incomplete or doesn't necessarily apply to your unit. So definitely, if you have any questions, either contact your dealer, contact us, or look up the specific product that you have questions about and contact the manufacturer. Today we're going to be doing winterization, covering a couple of different applications and how to do a couple different types of winterization depending on your vehicle. Some of the stuff may be applicable, some of it may not. So the first thing that you need to do is dump the black and gray tanks and flush them out thoroughly. You can see inside the water bay that there's a gray handle typically and a black handle, or there'll be a switch marked black or switch marked gray. Activate the valves, dump the system, hook up the Santa flush, flush the system really well. And then you're going to want to open your low point drains. Sometimes this is a valve or several in the water bay. It can be a pipe protruding through the floor with the plug installed in it. It could be a knife type valve as well. Or it could be part of a manifold, just depends on your unit. Then you're going to want to drain the fresh water tank. Typically this is done via an 1.5-inch knife valve, an electric switch, or a ball valve setup. Sometimes on travel trailers you'll see, once again, a pipe protruding somewhere around the fresh water tank. You take the plug out and just wait until it is all drained out, and then you can put the plug back in. Now you want to hook up an air hose to the system with the regulator set to 40 psi. The reason we set it to 40 psi is we don't want to increase the pressure above what the normal operating pressure of the system is and possibly do damage to some of the components. This will allow us to test the integrity of the water system. Now this is something that we do as a service for both the customer and for us. It's giving us a peace of mind that when we do the winterization, we're doing so on a unit that is intact. Structurally, all the piping is good, the water heater's good. So if somebody has question of in the springtime when they de-winterize, if there's a broken component, we can go back and say, well, yeah, that must have been an issue with the way that we perform the service. It's no longer intact. So you set it to 40 psi. This allows us to test the integrity of the water system. Once this is confirmed, you can shut the air pressure off, but you can leave the regulator attached. You're going to want your air hooked up a little bit later. So now you want to go and drain the water heater. Now that you put a little bit of pressure to the system, unless you open one of the valves, the system's still going to be pressurized. So the pop-off valve on the top of the water heater, if you have a conventional water heater, when you press that, you're going to hear a little bit of air rush out, and that's pressure equalization. That's fine. You want to do that because when you go to pull the plug out, if you pull that plug out under pressure, it's going to come at you with 65 or 40 pounds of air pressure behind it, and it can actually hurt you pretty bad, and it'll definitely get you wet and ruin your morning. So at that point, the water heater's drained. By removing the plug or the anode rod, you can just place it on the inside of the tray, on the inside of the water heater. Make sure you bleed off, once again, the line pressure via the overpressure valve on the water heater. You can open a faucet if you want to, like I said, to bleed the pressure off. Then once the water heater is drained completely, you can go ahead and reinstall the anode rod or the plug. It's not going to hurt. You don't want to leave it open. You could get bugs and stuff like that in there that you don't want in your water system. Then you want to go to the back side of the water heater and place it in a bypass position. And that's what we're showing here on the blackboard. There are multiple different renditions of how you can put a water heater into bypass. There's a single valve system. There's double valve systems, there's a 3-valve system. Each one of them operates a little bit differently, and this kind of shows, illustration kind of shows how they work. So if you have a valve and a valve and a valve, it's a 3-valve system. Basically shutting off this valve, and opening this valve creates a loop, and that allows you to pump antifreeze or blow out the water lines with compressed air and not fill the water heater or fill the water heater full of compressed air. Some of the on-demand water heaters that are coming out on trailers and motorhomes now, they have very specific winterization instructions. I'm not going to get into all those. There's several different brands, but you're going to want to either download the instruction manual or you're going to want to read the owner's manual if one came with the unit. and determine what the best way to do that is. You can cause a lot of damage. They're very expensive. They run anywhere between $800 and $1,200, so you definitely want to make sure that you're following the instructions. So now at this point, you can cycle the water pump on for about 30 seconds. They're 99% of them are diaphragm type pumps. It's not going to hurt them to run them for a short period of time, and what that does is it's just going to clear the residual water out of the pump head assembly. It's not going to damage the pump, so don't stress over it. If you're unsure, you can remove the intake fitting from the water pump and add a length of PEX tubing or just the clear poly tubing with a 90-degree half-inch female pipe to PEX fitting, and then you can use your pump, your coach pump, to pump antifreeze to the rest of the system. Some units are already equipped like this. They'll have a T-valve, a three-way valve, where you can select normal operation off or winterize, and it'll pull RV antifreeze out of a jug and push it through the system. If your unit's equipped with an Instahot, and what an Instahot is like an in-counter and hot water on demand system, you want to unplug it first, and then you want to drain it completely because they have a small reservoir tank, and if it freezes, it'll crack and it'll break, and they're relatively expensive to repair. So now you want to go ahead and disconnect the ice maker feed line and blow it out with compressed air. Disconnect the ice maker solenoid supply line and turn the compressed air to the city back on. This will purge the line, then you can shut it off. Now you can disconnect the ice maker filter and turn the supply valve off, and what that does is that basically isolates the plumbing loop for the refrigerator, and so then you can go about winterizing the rest of the system, and you don't have to worry about air loss through any of the fittings on the refrigerator. Now you can go ahead and turn the compressed air back on, open and close all the interior and exterior faucets and fixtures, close the low point drains. Make sure you aren't getting any large quantities of water out of any of the faucets. When you see kind of a foggy mist coming out of them, you're pretty much not going to get any more water out of them than that. You can go ahead and shut them off, and what I usually do is I'll turn them on, all of them, and then shut them off one at a time, working progressively closer to the water bay, and so if there's anything left in the line, it'll escape. Okay, washer dryer. So on a washer dryer, you add a 1/4 gallon of RV antifreeze to the drum in the soap tray and run it through a cycle. It'll pull antifreeze through the system. It'll pull it through the pump and the drain, and then if you have access, if it's a non-stacked type washer dryer, usually there's an access panel in the back of the cabinet you can pull up, and that'll give you access to the drain pipe. There's a P-trap at the bottom of the drain pipe. You want to pour a 1/4 gallon or so down the P-trap, and that'll displace all the water in the trap, and so you don't have to worry about it freezing and breaking and having a big leak in the springtime. So the dishwasher, basically kind of the same thing as the washer. Add a 1/4 gallon to the unit and run it through a cycle. It'll pull it through the pump, pull it through the drain, and should be winterized. AquaHots and HydroHots. If the unit's equipped with an AquaHot or HydroHot or any other type of hydronic heating system, there are very specific instructions on how to winterize them. But in all cases, you need to pump RV antifreeze through the fresh loop on the AquaHot, HydroHot, Oasis, Quantum, whatever the system happens to be. Failure to do that will result in damage to the unit. Replacing an AquaHot could cost roughly $12,000, so it's definitely something that you want to pay attention to if that's the case. Okay, so after closing the holding tank valves, the system's pretty much purged. You shouldn't have much water left in it. You want to pour a gallon of RV antifreeze down the toilet, leave a small amount covering the ball valve, and then pour a 1/2 gallon down the kitchen sink. This will settle the pink antifreeze up against the drain valves, and it'll keep them from freezing and damaging them. If the unit's equipped with a macerator, add 2 gallons to the black tank, extend the hose, pull the 3-inch dump valve handle, and then quickly reseat it. And what that should do is it should allow a 1/2 gallon or a gallon of RV antifreeze to settle up against the inside cavities of that macerator, and then it'll keep it from freezing and breaking. Okay, Then what you want to do is go around and clean all the excess antifreeze from the sinks. If you have any type of a porcelain or plastic sink that's light colored, it's not stainless, the stuff, you know, it's non-toxic, but it will, it has a dye marker, so it will stain those surfaces if you have any on the counter or anything like that. Just make sure you clean it up. Soap and water will clean it up pretty easily. So then the non-plumbing related winterize items, check the wiper fluid and add winter fluid. Top off and check the wiper condition. So you definitely, there's two different types of windshield wiper fluid. One is to remove bugs from your windshield, and that's kind of the summer fluid. And sometimes it doesn't have a very good freeze point. And so if temperatures drop, you know, to freezing or below zero, there's a possibility that it might freeze the windshield wiper fluid. It'll rupture the vessel that contains it or break the pump. So you definitely, I mean, it sounds like something that's not a big deal, but you don't want to overlook it. Then check the condition of your windshield wipers. You're already kind of here doing some of the vehicle inspections anyway. Just make sure that they're not cracked. You run your thumb over the leading edge and they're nice and flat and there's no pieces missing. Then you want to check the condition of the engine antifreeze and note the freeze point. This can be done with a couple different tools. I'm sure that all of you have seen or own the small, looks like a turkey baster with some little balls floating in it. That'll give you an indication of what the freeze point is, or some of them have a little needle, and that'll give you an indication what the freeze point is. We use a refractometer, and that basically uses the way light passes through the fluid in order to determine what the concentration is. It'll work with propylene glycol, ethylene glycol, and it'll also work for battery solution. So same thing with the generator. You want to check the coolant, note the freeze point of the coolant, and if it's less than 40 below, if it's 20 below or 10 below and you plan on being in that kind of weather, you definitely want to change the concentricity of the coolant in the system. You can do that two ways. One, you can drain the system completely and replace it with known good coolant, or two, you can drain out predetermined amount of coolant and then add undiluted coolant back into the system. Usually coolant will come either diluted or undiluted just for that purpose. Then at that point, definitely while you're out there walking around, you might want to check your battery specific gravity and note it. A fully charged battery in good condition will not freeze. A dead battery will freeze, and if you've ever seen a battery that has bulged sides or you know, the terminals look like they're protruding, that could be because the battery froze. And what it can cause, even if there aren't any external signs, is if the electrolyte freezes in between the plates and separates the plates slightly, the battery may still produce 12 volts, but it will not ever hold the capacity that it did before it was damaged. At that time, it's a good idea to add a fuel stabilizer and anti-gel to the tank and then run the engine and generator for a good 30 minutes. That'll allow all of that treated fluid or fuel to be pulled through the fuel system, fill the filters, the injectors, the lines, and all that good stuff, so you don't have to worry about having bad fuel in the system when you go to start your coach again in the spring. If you're at the place where your coach is going to be stored for the winter, it's a good time to turn off the battery switches for long-term storage, and you will get some parasitic draw, you will get some loss. Turning off those switches generally does not 100% completely shut the system off, because there are things that are wired in previous to the switch, like anything that has to do with the engine and its presets, the transmission and its presets, the dash radio, things of that nature. Anything that has a memory will probably still be drawing a small amount of energy even during storage. And then at that point, you can go ahead and close off your LP supply line unless you're going to run the furnace. If you're just storing it and you're not going to be using the unit, you can go ahead and shut it off. If it does have any type of small leaks, that should take care of that. So then just a couple of just hints, I guess, helpful hints, advice. If you're going to store your RV in an area where you won't be in close proximity, such as a storage lot or anything of that nature, definitely remove anything of value. I wouldn't leave anything in there that has any of your personal information on it, whether it be vehicle registration or service documents or any sensitive stuff of that nature, anything that somebody could get their hands on and potentially do you harm, steal your identity, things of that nature. Wouldn't leave any type of valuables, jewelry, firearms, anything like that in there that could be stolen. I mean, those places they're semi-secure. It's a chain link fence usually, unless you're in a locked building that has actual security. Lock up all your cargo doors. Make sure that your windows are locked so that nobody can gain entry into the inside of the coach easily. Dump the chassis air and deflate the airbags. This will purge all the moisture from the tanks and the valves that may freeze and damage brake and ride components. Every spring, we have a lot of people that are calling in, pulling their coaches out of mothballs, saying that they won't come up on the chassis air. Usually the reason they won't come up on the chassis air is because there's a low point somewhere in the system, and the low point could be a ride height valve. It fills full of moisture under freezing conditions, it freezes, it cracks the housing, and now all of a sudden your ride system doesn't work. So that's something definitely to consider. Close your shades, as even the winter sun can wreak havoc on your dashboard and your internal fabrics and things like your couch and anything else that may be susceptible to sunlight. Inspect the roof for possible leaks or voids in sealer or damaged components. A cracked skylight or a cracked roof AC cover or anything of that nature has snow sitting on it or rain sitting on it. It's going to be likely to leak into the coach and cause damage, so you definitely want to preempt that, especially if you're not going to be around the coach for a couple of months. You won't realize the damage is done until it's too late. And then definitely remove all of your food from the refrigerator and all the cabinets, even if it's things in there that are dry and you're not worried about them spoiling. Anything that rodents can smell, mice or pack rats or anything like that, they're going to try to get into the coach and get to those things. And 3 months with a family of pack rats living in your coach can do a lot of damage. They not only will they eat that stuff, but I've seen them chew up interior finishes and upholstery. They may go in there and expire and cause a smell in the coach, or they may chew up wiring and do some serious damage. So definitely something you want to be aware of. But that's pretty much the process that we go through every time that we winterize a coach here on the shop. It's going to vary pretty wildly depending on what product you have, who the manufacturer is. Is it a powered unit, gas, diesel, towable, fifth wheel, or a bumper pull? A lot of those things are going to vary based on those. We have a check-in, a winterized checklist sheet, and basically goes over that, and we'll post that up so that you can have a copy of it for yourself. And if anybody wants a copy of the dialogue, we have that as well. If you have any questions, you can give us a call, 541-317-3669 or 541-322-2184, and just ask for service. Thanks for joining us today, and I hope you found it informative. I hope everybody learned something, and I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you.